Hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch our on demand webinar session, Retail and CPG Cloud-based Analytics. This webinar is produced by Aberdeen and is brought to you by Oracle Cloud. My name is Jessica Burns, Creative Content Director at Aberdeen, and joining me today is Omer Mankara, VP and Principal Analyst at Aberdeen, Guru Sulubhavi, Principal Product Manager, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, Rich Clayton, VP of Product Strategy, Oracle Analytics, and Jeff Dewing, Principal Product Manager, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. This webinar is pre-recorded, so we encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. Contact information will be provided at the conclusion of the webinar. And now, to get things underway, I'll hand it off to Omer Mankara to take us through our agenda.
Great. Hi everyone. Once again, welcome to our webinar where we have a great session prepared for you today. Now, we'll talk about data and analytics for retail and CPG organizations, data and analytics based in the cloud. But before we get started with our conversation, we do want to cover a few housekeeping items, specifically starting out with what is our journey today looking like, our agenda. So throughout the conversation today, we'll kick things off with a quick look into the role of data and analytics for fast-tracking retail and CPG digital transformation. And then we're going to talk about the notion of seamless data management and why that's so critical for retail and CPG firms to become more agile and also achieve greater and more rapid ROI. And we're also going to be talking about a use case of applying analytics in a best-in-class way in terms of how best-in-class organizations are using retail and CPG analytics to ensure product availability and maximize revenue for their warehouse management activities, where we'll touch on the notion of omnichannel fulfillment as well. And along the way, throughout our conversation, we are going to have several different points where we'll check in with our co-speakers from Oracle and learn about Rich, Guru, and Jeff's experiences and observations working with many retail and CPG leaders out there. So with that, some of the other quick housekeeping items that we want to cover is a quick reminder that all of the research findings that we're about to share with you today are all grounded on several studies that we've completed over the past several months. The most recent one being a study that we've surveyed more than 300 organizations around the world. So throughout the conversation, we'll reference our findings from those different studies that we've conducted. And the reason why we're also referencing is that because the research findings that we're about to bring you today are not based on our opinions, but rather they're based on facts that your peers, potentially yourselves, may have participated within the survey process to share what works for your organizations as far as driving better results and what those results look like to become more agile with the help of using data and analytics. Now, speaking of the notion of how using data and analytics helps retail and CPG firms, when we compare the retail and CPG organizations that have a seamless data management program against the peers that do not have such a program, here's what we found. Those companies that are using analytics are outperforming their peers, the non-users, by 82% greater annual increase in employee engagement rates. That's a huge margin, right? That means that both the employees in the front office, but also the back office and the operations are being empowered with the right information at the right time. And we'll expand more on why and how seamless data and analytics helps businesses achieve that. Those companies that are using analytics are also outperforming non-users of analytics by improving the customer profit margins to the tune of 59% more year over year. Again, especially in today's environment where profitability is critical, that's a huge differentiator for those firms. And one of the reasons why they're achieving such profit margins is besides decreasing their costs through better operational efficiency, they're also improving their revenue, as you can see to the third and fourth bullet points here. So our goal from today's webinar is to help you accomplish similar, if not better, results across your businesses. So with that, our last housekeeping item here is a quick overview of our key learnings, and that is starting out with the first one. We're not going to read through line by line here, but we're going to learn about why poor use of data is a challenge for retail and CPG firms to become more agile with the changing business environment. How the need to adapt to the business environment and its changes, the consumer behavior, the economic uncertainty, and the fast tracking of digital transformation is critical, and how data and analytics really are the key for companies to succeed in this area. We'll talk about how businesses are accelerating their transition to cloud, and how cloud-based analytics helps businesses with their seamless data management activities, as well as converting data into actionable insights, again, with the help of analytics, where we'll talk about the warehouse management use case in the third stop of our journey. So with that, why don't we dive a little bit deeper into that first step of our conversation, that is the role of data and analytics in fast-tracking retail and CPG digital transformation. So let's start off at a very high level, and let's talk about change. Why that's important in terms of driving that digital transformation, and how that relates to data and analytics. Well, change is happening in many different forms for many different organizations in different industries. In the case of retail and CPG, there's a whole lot of rules and regulations ranging from customer data privacy laws to regional laws. There's the changing consumer buying behavior. As of late, you have COVID-19, the coronavirus, and its impact in terms of how people buy, how businesses operate. Then you have earthquakes, hurricanes, the weather-related events. So change really is a constant. So that's a given. But what's not a given, that's an opportunity for companies to differentiate, is how adaptive, how agile they are to turn change into an opportunity. Now, let's give a little bit more specific examples in terms of how businesses need to respond to change differently, and hence the importance of agility. Now, back in May of 2020, we've conducted a survey on business resiliency to really gauge the impact of the coronavirus on retail and CPG organizations. And we've asked them several questions on how customer demand has changed over the past couple of weeks at that time in light of COVID. So as you can see in the red bars here, just about 1 out of 2 organizations have indicated that the demand for their products and services decrease in different scales. Meanwhile, one out of 3 businesses participating in the same survey have told us that they have seen an increase in buyer demand for their products and services. So as we all know, an increase versus a decrease in customer demand all requires different actions, requires different strategies. And that's why agility is so critical for companies to really gauge what's happening. Is the demand increasing or decreasing? What exact change factors are influencing the business activities? And when we asked the follow-on question in our survey on how companies are responding to those changes in customer demand, here's what we found out. The findings, the data points on the screen. The top 5 priorities that companies are putting in place include, number 1, having a better visibility into the changes happening in light of customer interactions, but also how that's influencing the operational activities. Are customers buying more through online versus in person? Are there any orders that are delivered late for customers? So you can focus on the areas that you need to improve from a delivery standpoint. So companies really try shine the spotlight on what they need to fix or what they need to improve so they can adapt to the change in business conditions. As you move down the list, this was, by the way, a multi-choice question because companies may incorporate different strategies all at the same time to adapt to change. So the second top strategy they put in place is decreasing operational complexity. That is, reducing all the complexity due to internal processes or lack of integrated approaches to CX and operational technology. So they have a more simplified technology and process workflow to manage their activities. Firms are also telling us that they're using automation at a greater scale to reduce labor costs, but also decrease inefficiencies as it relates to their manual processes, as well as fast-tracking their digital transformation journeys. And those journeys, by the way, could include not just the customer-facing activities, those are digital channels, but also the internal digital capabilities on the fulfillment side as well. And towards the bottom, companies have told us that they really prioritize and understand what they need to invest first, because there's a lot of different options in terms of where and how you start with digital transformation. So companies are doing a detailed cost-benefit analysis on where to get started. And that, by the way, folks, is our first building block. We'll talk about 3 building blocks to success by using data and analytics. Agility is number 1. So with that, Rich, I do want to get back to you here with our first question to really learn about what are some of the top analytical priorities that you see retail and CPG firms deploy in light of all those changes that we've just looked at.
Omar, thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate your thoughts on such a critical topic at such a critical time. Just by quick way of introduction, VP of Product Strategy for Oracle Analytics, and I've been around this industry for some time. I coach customers on how to create value from data. I teach analytics at the University of Oregon, Cal Poly, and mentor young professionals as they come into the workforce. I have spent quite a bit of time with our retail and CPG customers, and suffice it to say that cash is king. And number one focus above all is how can we improve working capital and cash flow, specifically daily cash flow. What I find is that more and more our retailers especially are looking at creating very dynamic scenarios that aren't just fixed in time, that aren't long-term, but scenarios that are much more agile and much more short-term. They're trying to understand first-mile visibility into the supply chain and how it impacts inventory. I found it really interesting perspective from Nielsen as to how they thought about the evolution and changes with consumer behavior. And they talk about, sort of pre-shutdown, during shutdown, reopen, and how essential and non-essential categories evolve and flex in that period. And clearly, I think the implication here is that there needs to be a much tighter partnership with public health organizations to better understand how these consumer insights change with that evolution of the virus. I've been working with one of our large retailers on the West Coast, and specifically with the Chief Human Resources Officer, a very large retailer. And basically, number one thing he said to me was, look, without healthy employees, I can't keep food on the shelves and I can't sustain the mission that we have. And so he was looking to analytics, not necessarily for cash and consumers, but really around protecting the health and safety of his employees, and also predicting which ones were at greatest risks and how can we backfill and how can we improve our recruiting and hiring processes in areas and in locations we think we might have some gaps. They've also started to track and measure sanitation metrics and also put in place measuring the effectiveness of their consumer protection in terms of the health and safety as people come to their stores. And I would say that without people, there's no profit. And so I feel really strongly that working with this particular customer, what they realized, and perhaps what you may realize, is the gaps they had in their strategy, the gaps they had in their data about their employees. And so these are just some of, certainly not an exhaustive list, but just a few of the top areas that I see, Omar, that our customers in the retail space are facing today.
Great, thank you so much, Rich. And we really find both the emphasis on cash really important to make sure that companies are transforming as they maintain operational aspects of their businesses, but also sanitary analytics, right? So looking at, do we have the right pillars to make sure that we can keep the business going so we have employees still available to be able to meet the demands of our customers. So thank you again for sharing those perspectives. So speaking about, the impact of data and analytics and looking at how retail and CPG firms are responding to change, one of the questions that we asked in our latest survey with more than 300 retail and CPG firms participating in it was how satisfied are businesses in terms of their ability to use data. The response, as you can see on the screen, was rather eye-opening. Only 5% of retail and CPG firms have told us that they're fully satisfied as it relates to how they use customer, but also operational data in their activities. That means that More than 9 out of 10 businesses, 95% of businesses are struggling in this area. So we had a follow-on question in our survey to find out why. Why are businesses struggling in this area? So companies have indicated multiple different factors, and going from top to bottom, the number one challenge or the number one reason why firms are struggling with data management and utilization is insufficient data. In the area of retail and CPG, this is especially important because customer needs change so frequently that you may have data about a certain customer even from the last month or from maybe the previous week, but that data may no longer be as reflective of the buying needs of that particular buyer. So insufficient data is definitely a big challenge. Combined with lack of skilled human resources. So you may already have teams of data scientists, but you may not have enough of them, or you may have to downsize on that element of your company. So companies are struggling in terms of having enough human resources to manage and leverage the data. Then you have data quality. That is, you may have data about a customer, but is it the right kind of data? To give an example, a customer may call in to say, hey, I received my order, it's the wrong size, I'd like to return, can you help? Now, if the only data that's available to the contact center agent in this case is the marketing click-through rate or shopping cart abandonment rate data, that's not going to help the contact center agent. The data has to be the right kind of data for the employee to do their job. And that's why companies are also struggling with disparate data sources as well. The reason why oftentimes businesses don't have the right data for the right employee is because data is fragmented across the business. There's no connected view of customer and operational insights. That's also connected to the lack of technologies. If you're not investing and using the relevant technologies to connect the data and distribute the right data to the right employee, then you're going to be struggling in that area. So in this case, Guru, I do want to get back to you here, as I know you work with many organizations as well in this area, to see how do these data challenges map to the new challenges that firms are observing in light of COVID, or the existing ones that they've been observing even before COVID in their retail and CPG programs?
Thank you, Omar, for the excellent insights there. By the way, I'm Guru Sulibhavi. I'm a product manager on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and I'm particularly focused on developing solutions for the retail markets. Omar, what I found interesting was the first one from your previous slide about insufficient data. It's interesting because according to a research done by McKinsey, based on their analysis said, they felt that the retail market was could generate the highest value from machine learning and AI because they have huge data sets. But to your point, this also points out to what the new challenges are in terms of there is a lot of data today to be able to generate value from what they have. But I think as business model change, as companies change, I mean, retail has been transforming much quicker than any other industry in terms of the competition, in terms of the technologies being used. So it is interesting, at the same time not surprising that the insufficient data came up as the first topic. And I don't think the challenges in terms of the data per se are different. They're still basic needs about having a single source of truth. There is new pieces of data coming in, especially as companies think about monetizing their data. I mean, if you think about transformation and say in the future there is going to be, if your competitors are generating 10x more data from revenue, I think it totally flips the question as to what data can I collect to what data do I need to make more money out of it. And I think that's not only going to change the scale of the problem, but also it's going to change the scope of the problem. So it's going to be the number of data sources, the amount of data, and one of the last thing I want to highlight was around the use of human resources. I think given that scale and scope, companies will have to focus on a lot of automation as to how they can really leverage their most prized resources in their organization. Talk of data scientists or analysts or engineers, the biggest value they generate is through business insights. And we have to ask ourselves, where are they spending their time today? Are they spending time in trying to just getting the data to get to the answer they need? or are they really driving decision based on that?
Great. Thank you, Guru, for sharing those insights as it relates to data management challenges. Now, before we get into the second portion of our journey, that is the second stop of our conversation, just a quick look back as far as what we just discussed. We talked about how data and analytics are instrumental in enabling digital transformation, but also agility, the business agility for retail and CPG firms, which is the first building block that we suggested our participants in this webinar to incorporate in their activities. Now, we're going to talk about the notion of seamless data and how it facilitates agility and rapid ROI. So, when we talk about seamless data, what do we refer to actually? So on the screen, you're seeing many different systems that are used by different retail and CPG organizations. And this, by the way, is by no means an exhaustive list. It's just a sampler to show some of the many systems that those organizations are using, ranging from CRM to e-commerce to payment processing to reporting and WFM, that is workforce management. So one of the critical areas that we highly suggest retail and CPG firms to focus on is to connect data across all these systems. There's different kinds of data that is gathered across all these systems, and when this data is fragmented, that means that you have siloed views of operational activities. You have siloed views of customer journeys. So our second building block here is the connecting of the customer data. So make sure that you're agile, and secondly, you ensure agility by connecting data across all these systems. Now, companies are using different systems to capture and manage data, but that data is also captured across many different channels, customer interaction channels. So those include the ones that you see on the screen. The companies in purple are the ones that are currently using the channels, and the ones in teal bars are the ones that are planning to use these particular channels. So overall, if you zoom out a little bit here, we see that 50%, that is 1 out of 2 retailers and CPG firms, are using at least 9 different channels within their customer interactions. And those 9 channels do vary from company to company, even by region. But the important takeaway here is that there's a wealth, a breadth of data that's available, data in different types, structured data and unstructured data, small data and big data available for retail and CPG firms. It's really critical for companies to, in this case, leverage those insights to do their jobs. And Rich, I know early on you talked about how companies are utilizing some of the data that they have within their activities, some of the activities that they focus on to adapt to the new realities of the marketplace. So I did want to get back to you for a second time to see what's your take as far as the breadth and the depth of data that we've just talked about and the importance of connecting those insights.
Yeah, it's a great point, Omar, and thank you. Obviously, COVID has created a massive data deficit for retailers. They don't really have a baseline anymore to work from. And so some of the small data that may have been irrelevant before COVID is now highly valuable because the transactional point of sale data that we rely upon is no longer happening at the same rate of speed, or it's very erratic. So I think the important piece here is, as you point out, is really the integration of these channels, integration of this data. We call it converged data. Converged data is not just, numbers. It's insights and indicators that come from all the touch points in which we interact with our customers and our suppliers. And I think to the degree to which retailers step back and look at this strategy with a fresh pair of eyes and try to understand the relevance of some of these data streams in today's context. They may not have been valued before, but they may be valuable today. I think those that take a fresh look, I think, will benefit from better outcomes and better customer experiences.
Great. Thank you for your perspective here, Rich. So what we talk about as it relates to seamless data in terms of how we define it. Now, let's touch on the ROI of ensuring and maintaining a seamless view of data that is customer and operational data. Now, when we look at the year-over-year change in performance of companies in teal bars here, the teal bars are indicative of businesses, retail and CPG firms with seamless data management programs, and the orange bars are indicative of the annual change in performance of firms without a seamless data management program. Our research tells us that companies that ensure a seamless data management program are really achieving some phenomenal results from a financial and customer experience standpoint. So next to the red arrow here, we're seeing that those companies are reporting almost 6 times the annual increase in revenue from their net new buyers. So that means that they're understanding the needs and buying behavior of net new buyers, but also leveraging word of mouth from existing buyers so they can drive more referral revenue through that source. They're also understanding the needs of their existing clientele and hence increasing their customers' wallet share, whereas businesses that are not ensuring a seamless customer and operational data management program are seeing no gains in this area. Another result that they report is improvements in cross-sell and upsell revenue, as well as improving marketing effectiveness, which is reflected here in the form of return on marketing investments, which is defined as marketing's contribution to company revenue. So clearly, they're really not just better understanding the customer's needs, but also really monitoring how marketing activities are influencing the customer and buyer behavior so they can adjust their activities to gain the most ROI from marketing spend. And ultimately, as it relates to all of those metrics, we're also seeing that as a result of improving the customer satisfaction, as a result of selling more and ensuring efficiency, companies are able to improve the profit margins in their activities. So what I wanted to highlight on this slide is beyond the specific metrics here, we also see analytics for pretty much the whole business reflected through the performance metrics here. Essentially, it's not just the marketer, it's not just the salesperson, it's not just the CFO that's benefiting by using analytics and data the right way. It's the whole business that's reporting improvements in their performance, as we can see right here. And more insights here that are validated in terms of how analytics impacts the whole business, and that is employee engagement rates. As we discussed early on in the opening of our webinar, where we mentioned that retail and CPG firms that have the effective use of data and analytics in their activities are reporting almost 90% greater annual increase in employee engagement. You can see the precise numbers over here. The reason why companies are able to report such drastic improvements in employee engagement is because they can understand what exact data points are employees needing in the back office, in the front office, how they use certain kinds of data so that they can, again, ensure the availability of data, but that data is also easily accessible for employees to do their jobs. So again, Rich, I do want to get back to you one more time, as I know you're working with a lot of organizations in terms of leveraging the data analytics capabilities to address the needs of the current business environment. So given all that, what do you suggest firms to do with the data they have available to become more agile and maintain their ability to achieve their goals, despite all the changes that they're observing nowadays?
Yeah, thank you. I put together a little short list of things that I see really great retailers doing today and encourage many of you to explore in your own organizations. I think this environment we're in right now really causes a moment to pause and figure out what data do we have today, what is high value, what's unknown, what should we delete or deprecate or archive, what should we acquire in the process. So when I mean having a converged data strategy or refreshing your data strategy, I mean not just internal, but external, not just numeric, but video, social, text, location. As Omar said, it's not just about big data, it's also small data. AI got a really bad name for itself in the industry, and at Oracle, we think about it as applied and invisible, not necessarily curing cancer, but making data work easier. And so we recommend that what you should do is look at the practical application. How can you improve and simplify data work for everyone in your organization? Maybe not just applying AI for personalization on e-commerce, but making recommendations about how to combine data or insights that are hidden inside of large data lakes. This pandemic has really put a spotlight on the importance of public-private partnerships around data. The dependency we have now on public health information is like no dependency we've ever had before. So many great firms I've worked with, especially in food, have really taken this to heart, and they've worked with state and local officials to come up with daily updates about the policies that the agencies are putting in place. In terms of project prioritization, there's lots of techniques. I call it the TRIM technique. How much time? What's the risk involved if we don't do something? What innovation can we create through this project? And what's the money or cost to doing it? Look at these projects with a fresh set of eyes. The projects that you had in February are probably not the same projects you have right now. And I encourage you to think about using some kind of a template, if you will, or mechanism for evaluating that. Cloud is certainly what a lot of our retail customers are embracing rapidly. It allows them to bring new sources of data online much faster. It allows them to connect to existing on-premise sources without, moving the entire stack. So there's a great opportunity, I think, to increase the agility of your analytic process by embracing cloud. Now, last thing I'll just say, and I'll turn it back over to you, is everyone's working from home now, with the exception of the folks that are in our stores. So the folks that are working from home, there's a huge opportunity to make recommendations, develop some learning and talent development programs around data literacy and analytic skills. Within our organization at Oracle, we have pretty aggressive talent development skills through this period. And I think it really is an opportunity that who knows how long we'll be working from home, but it's a great opportunity to invest in your workforce and really help them learn about the new possibilities that exist and how technology could help them in their day-to-day jobs.
Great. Thank you again, Rich, for those insights. And definitely agree in terms of how, especially at this time of work from home, but also change is really critical for companies to explore new ways of using data and analytics to find opportunities for innovation. So great point on that. So we just talked about the benefits of using data and analytics in helping retail and CPG firms increase customer spend, delight their buyers, reduce costs, ensure profit margins, improve employee engagement. But what about how that data and analytics is accessible? And that essentially talks about the deployment side of things. So over the past several years, we've been looking at how businesses, retail and CPG firms specifically, are accessing the data and analytics capabilities, and we're seeing a marked shift towards the cloud. More and more businesses are transitioning from on-premises to a cloud-delivered model for those capabilities. Now, there are different reasons driving such change, and when we ask that same question to businesses that are using cloud or planning to use cloud technology, the reasons why they cited are here on the screen. So the number one reason why companies are preferring analytics in the cloud is because they want to reduce their expenses. They hope that by setting up, maintaining, and updating the capabilities in a cloud environment, they can decrease their costs, but also ensure flexibility, moving from a fixed to a variable cost model, which, as we heard from Rich, especially in today's environment where cash is king, it also helps businesses manage working capital in a more predictable, accurate fashion. And then you have agility. As Rich has pointed out, more and more businesses are now finding ways to innovate by using data and analytics more effectively, and it's important to be able to readily access all those insights with minimal reliance on IT, which is our fourth data point here, so that IT can focus on doing their jobs, whereas the line of business on the in the front office and the back office are empowered with the right information at the right time, while still remaining secure and compliant with changing regulations and also keeping up with the changes in buyer demand.
Hi, Omar. Let me chime in a little bit here on the factors driving cloud investments for retailers. I mean, even pre-COVID, digital transformation was going to be a table stake for the retailers. And I think the COVID has just made that faster, as you had mentioned earlier. And I think as they're looking at the cloud, it's really one fundamental question is a question around resources. And I mean both about financial as well as human resources. I think the financial, as you see here, the financial resources are addressed, but I think there is also a huge human resources component to it, both about the talent they require to be able to drive this. And secondly, and probably more important, is in terms of leadership bandwidth. The reason I say that is that as customers are looking for setting up these seamless data management platforms, the complexity today for them is huge. If they're trying to do it on their own, just think about the hardware complexity they have. Even within the software solutions that they have, the number of vendors they have to deal with is another huge complexity. And I think that's where cloud can really make a huge impact, because what it allows is the agility and flexibility. Because a lot of things are unknown, but can I get to time to impact? Can I improve my impact in the short run without locking myself in for any future changes? For example, we're just working with this chief data officer of a large retailer where they've had data warehouse for a while. It's not been kept up. And I think the reasons are pretty obvious, right? The effort was going to maintaining the infrastructure or maintaining the databases. And I think they are looking for a solution to kind of, how do I create a better foundation to build on? And that's where I think one of the concept is around starting with something that gets me there 80% of the way. For example, leveraging the data models that we have on top of the analytics platform. That was one option the CDO thought was they can have a fresh start without actually doing something huge and with upfront investment. And I think more importantly, as when you talk of transforming any organization, quick wins really matter. And I think that's where the cloud can really get to a very quick time to impact for our customers.
Great. Thank you, Guru, for sharing those insights. Now, we talked about different best practices so far as part of our conversation. Let's talk a little bit about some of what our research shows that those companies in teal, the firms with seamless data management programs, are doing to get the most out of those data and analytics capabilities. Number one, from left to right, they're more likely to be segmenting consumers by different criteria. That could be the demographics, that could be region, previous spends, loyalty information, hence our point on connecting customer and operational data across the whole business so you can really segment data more accurately. Once you segment, one of the ways that you can use that information is to also gauge consumer channel preferences. So our buyers are more likely to be using online, in-store, mobile app, so you can engage them in the right places, but also you know what delivery formats they prefer, so you can predict, in light of recent orders, how your fulfillment activities need to be shaped. A lot of businesses are using modeling of customer journeys to be able to derive more actionable insights. And as they look into customer journeys, they really focus on the inflection points across the journey. So what makes a consumer more likely to be loyal, for example, or what influences the consumer's risk to abandon an item in a shopping cart? So with the help of all those analytics, companies are able to improve their activities as they want to achieve certain results. So with that, Rich, I know you also work with many different leaders across the retail and CPG spectrum. So I would love to see if you can share some success stories in terms of how businesses are using these capabilities or some others in their particular activities.
Absolutely. A couple things I'll just maybe cover. Two great customers. Stitch Fix, I think everyone knows, great personalized styling service. They were one of the first companies to blend this proprietary styling data with a personalized shopping experience. My daughter tells me I need to use Stitch Fix. She's probably right. And their analytic need really has a lot to do with speed and agility. What they wanted to understand was, how can we use AI to automate some of our analytic processes and really deepen the insights we have about consumer buying patterns. And if you look at the results, they claim that they have 25% reduction in the time it takes to analyze data. And I think the most important thing, especially with today's circumstances, that's really remarkable is 66% improvement in connecting new data. I think if we set that type of bar for ourselves, if we said, how long does it take us to connect processes and connect and integrate new data, and we benchmarked ourselves, what would a 66% improvement look like? It's probably material. So I thought that this is just a really great example. Obviously, this is a cloud example, so they used a modern cloud platform from our company to do that. And then just one other last great case study is Eagle Moss. This is also an e-commerce customer focusing on selling collectibles and merchandise, and I think what I liked about what they're talking about and their success is really builds on what Omar is talking about with this connected view of the consumer and tracking back the behavior and understanding the behavior and having a common perspective about that performance. So they combine first-party and second-party data, and really what they were after, similar to Stitch Fix, was speed and the ability to adapt. The days of taking 3 months, 6 months to adapt a data warehouse are gone. Furthermore, consumers don't want dashboards anymore. They want access to the data. Literacy skills through the contribution of the higher education system in the United States are growing rapidly. And so we have a technically proficient workforce that's just hungry for data. And so Eagle Moss was a great example of a customer who was able to stand up data very quickly, especially around the customer journey and the customer behavior on all types of information. So obviously happy to share more about those in the future as time permits.
Great. Thank you again for sharing those insights, Rich. So that brings us to the third stop of our journey, by the way, folks. So just a quick look back again. The first stop was the role of data and analytics in helping firms fast-track their digital transformation and adapt to change. We just talked about how companies are using seamless data to facilitate agility, but also achieve rapid ROI. And this particular section of our conversation, we're going to talk about use case more so, or really a closer look in terms of how businesses are using analytics to align their warehouse management activities with product availability, maximizing revenue, and ensuring omnichannel fulfillment. So a quick reminder here, early on, we've seen that only 5% of retail and CPG firms are satisfied with their ability to use data that is customer and operational data in their activities. Now, I want to put that up because of how organizations are struggling with challenges in terms of accessing data that is customer and operational data. That creates downstream effects on employees' ability to do their jobs. In fact, in our research, when we looked at how employees are managing their time in terms of how they look and access information, it turns out on average 17% of an employee's time is spent looking for information. So if you do a quick financial model here where we look at a back office organization that has 500 employees, where each employee has a $50,000 average labor cost, again, a financial model here, the numbers may change from company to company, but sticking with that model, that 17% of employee time spent looking for data means that the company incurs $4.25 million each and every year in unnecessary labor costs. And that, by the way, is just the labor cost portion. That does not reflect the cost of lack of productivity. So that's why it's critical to incorporate data and analytics the right way for companies to be able to fulfill customer orders and manage the warehouse effectively. So how are companies addressing those challenges? Well, they rely on data and analytics, as we discussed early on. So on the screen, within the table here, we're looking at the comparative adoption rates of different analytical tools. In the second column, we're looking at firms without seamless data management programs. And in the third column, we're looking at firms with seamless data management programs. So comparing those, we can actually see a reverse pyramid, a reverse Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where business intelligence that is a more widespread and readily available analytical capability deployed by many retail and CPG firms is adopted more widely across organizations. And then as you move down the list or up in the pyramid, so to speak, you see a greater adoption in real-time reporting and alerting, again, by companies with seamless data management programs. That means that they're not just using analytics, but they're also analyzing the data in real time so they can keep track of changes in a timely fashion and adjust to the changes in the marketplace. They're also using predictive analytics towards the middle in the table here, so they can make predictions about changes in business events, make predictions about customer churn, shopping cart abandonment rate, or falling behind in delivering customer orders in a timely fashion so they can take action in a timely fashion. And then those same firms, the ones with seamless data management programs, are more likely to be using real time and next best action guidance, which is prescriptive intelligence in the fourth row here, followed by machine learning, which, as we heard from Rich early on, there's a lot of conversation as far as how AI capabilities, including machine learning, can be used. And really, machine learning itself is a great example of how businesses in retail and CPG could easily access to the vast volume of insights that are readily available across all the systems by using machine learning capabilities. So with that, we talked about all the changes that retail and CPG firms are facing today. So let's take a closer look in terms of how they translate to their impact in terms of omnichannel fulfillment. Now, over the past 6 to 8 months, pretty much all around the world, buying habits have changed. And they've changed in such a way that discretionary spend, especially in brick and mortar in person, has decreased. More and more orders are placed online, but also delivery models are changing as well. Companies are trying to shift more profitably while meeting customer demand. So they're trying to really balance their act where they're trying to ensure profits while meeting customer needs. And that's where, again, that agility and flexibility comes in with the help of analytics. Now, on the screen here, we're looking at two different categories. In this case, best-in-class, retail and CPG organizations, depicted in the purple bar here. And the ones in gray are the ones that are laggard organizations that are falling behind. So one of the more commonly adopted capabilities across the best-in-class is their focus on precisely measuring what sort of inventory levels are needed to meet different demand levels by customers in different regions. And that's important to ensure service level agreement compliance, so SLA compliance. And from a tactical delivery perspective, one of the ways they build such visibility is to monitor SKU level visibility across all their stores and distribution centers. As you can see, adopted 50% more widely across the best-in-class versus other businesses. Now, also taking an outside perspective, so the first data point, precise measurement of inventory investment, was really looking at the internal operations as a use case of analytics. So for analyzing the external data, that is customer data, companies are also forecasting the customer demand across different channels. How are the buying habits changing across different buying groups, across different regions, so they can make sure that they have the right products available in the right locations to be delivered to the customers and address customer demand in an efficient manner. And a couple more data points here as far as how the best-in-class businesses are building visibility, scheduling, and executing based on that visibility. Again, same color scheme in the bar chart here. So one of the most widely adopted capabilities across the best-in-class is adjusting the workforce labor needs. So we heard from Rich early on how businesses are measuring sanitary levels and ensuring, for example, that employee health is guaranteed or maintained, so companies are able to maintain their workforce levels to address customer demand. You can see that being more widely adopted across the best-in-class. As you move down the list, you're also seeing businesses are building visibility in terms of real-time transaction status. So are items delivered on time? Are they falling behind? Alerting customers, but also alerting the supervisors in the warehouse management roles or fulfillment roles, so they know what they have to do to make sure that the customer needs are met and met in a timely fashion. And then as you go further down the list, addressing the demand signals. So if they're seeing a sudden change in demand signals, companies are more likely to be taking sudden and corrective action to be able to meet the changing needs of their buyers. So Jeff, question to you here. I know we've covered several different activities as far as how best-in-class firms are managing their activities. And do you have any examples where you see retail and CPG firms use these warehouse management activities, and what sort of results they observe when they use them?
Sure. Yeah. So first, thanks Thanks, Omar. By way of introduction, my name is Jeff Dewing, and I'm a product manager for retail and consumer goods for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. I spend a lot of my time in the field with our top customers and have held some executive roles at Tier 1 retail consumer goods companies. So look, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pandemic has really elevated the importance of the overall supply chain and warehouse management process. And it really has exposed opportunity areas and stress points, during that period. The name of the game is to get that product to the end consumer and avoid stockout situations, as it has been, but in this new norm. So we're seeing a bifurcation in types of retail and consumer goods companies right now. First, those that offer essential goods such as grocery items and the like are seeing high demand, albeit kind of lower margin in terms of a profit, but high throughput there. And then those who have a higher or sole concentration on non-essential goods like hard lines, soft lines, which are higher margin but in less demand. But what we're seeing in either case, retailers, they have to adjust their demand process through a better understanding of if the pandemic demand is temporary or it's becoming kind of a new normal. It's critical to have processes and a data platform that can help interpret the whys of the change. More importantly, what are the new demand models that can be created to adjust category inventory and assortment, be in the right situation to gain back that market share where it's been lost or accelerate, where there are wins. So really, we've been able to help enable retail and consumer goods customers in three ways. First, from a data perspective, making sure that it's on a common platform, it's converged, it's integrated, it's accessible. Next, from a platform perspective, really enabling agility, speed, and efficiency through, in part, kind of moving to a cloud architecture. And then finally, from an analytics perspective, better decision making. For example, better visibility on the inventory, future planning on where to place bets to delight the customer, satisfy demand, and be most profitable.
Great. Thank you here for your insights, Jeff, on the topic. So that brings us to the talking point around AI. So we've just seen how retail and CPG firms are using data and analytics to ensure omnichannel fulfillment, ensure product availability, and maximize revenue. But early on, we talked about how many of those organizations are also turning to AI more and more. We looked at machine learning as one of the capabilities as it relates to AI. So one of the questions that we've also asked in a recent survey was, why are retail and CPG firms deploying AI and related capabilities? And we've done some trend analysis going between 2019 to 2020, and it seems that the number one reason has been consistent, and that is companies want to drive more intelligent activities, whether it be in the front office or in their back office. So they're struggling. 95% of them are struggling with use of data, and they're turning to AI as a way to help them in this area. Second top reason why they're turning to AI capabilities is because they want to empower their employees. As we've seen, many of the data analytics users are seeing drastic improvements in employee engagement rates, and no wonder why they're seeing such improvements, because they're also more likely to be using AI and related capabilities to be able to empower their employees to do their jobs. With that being said, as you can see, between 2019 and 2020, the percentage of firms that told us that they're looking to invest in AI or have invested in AI to empower employees have changed. That doesn't mean that companies are no longer seeing employee empowerment as important. Instead, it actually reflects a change in the lines of thinking across business leaders. As opposed to just focusing on an abstract notion of creating empowered employees, companies are being more pragmatic and more practical. They're looking to ensure employee empowerment by reducing inefficiencies, by helping employees become more productive. So they're not managing their time working on manual or repetitive tasks, but it's automation capabilities that do that, whereas employees are now spending their time focusing on areas that require their critical thinking. So with that, I know, Rich, early on you talked about how AI is already used, but also planning to be used across different organizations within the retail and CPG space. So I'd love to get your thoughts on the evolution of AI and maybe some use cases from your perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you, Omar. So, AI started out as something for coders to automate models. First started with supervised machine learning and then unsupervised machine learning and so forth. And now AI has really become a mainstream technology in all facets of retail. So one example, in HR, people are using AI embedded into analytics. We call that augmented analytics to predict employee attrition. We're seeing augmented analytics being applied to forecasting demand, as Jeff was talking about. We're seeing it used in finance to explain variances to original plans. Previously, narratives, if you will, management reports written at the end of each week or each 4-week period were written by scores of financial analysts. Now it can be automated through the use of natural language generation, which is really just a way to automate routine data task that takes time. I think we literally have seen hundreds of these cases, AI embedded into the data management process. So previously, IT teams would design data models, build the relationships between these data models. Now, AI can make recommendations about how to enrich the data model with new assets in the data catalog of the retail operation. Perhaps they're third-party assets or internal assets, but the analyst doing the job wasn't aware that those data components could be related and correlated. And it's not that they have to know SQL and know inner joins and outer joins and all of that. It makes a recommendation and acts on it. And that is just practical and pragmatic, to your point earlier, about how we can apply it to everyday data problems, everyday analytical needs that front office, store operations, merchandising, marketing, every function. I think there can find ways and opportunities to apply this technique. I encourage folks to just do a Google search on augmented analytics. Gartner thinks it's going to be the primary buying criteria for analytic platforms next calendar year. So we've got a lot to say on it, but not a lot of time. So thank you for the opportunity to just add a couple points on that.
Great, of course, and thank you, Rich, for sharing the perspective. So that brings us to our key learnings, folks. So we've made a few stop points just to look back what we covered. So let's take a look back at the broader journey so far as a quick recap on what we learned. So far we talked about how data and using data the right way to adapt to changes in the marketplace is a challenge for retail and CPG firms. We've seen that 95% of them are challenged in this area. Well, we've also seen a set of best-in-class organizations that use analytics and data the right way to take advantage of changes, to take advantage of economic uncertainty, changes in consumer behavior, fast-tracking digital transformation journeys to achieve success in their activities. We've talked about the role of cloud and how businesses are expediting their investments into cloud and the reasons why. And we've also talked about some of the best practices in terms of how businesses are turning data into actionable insights, where we've provided an extensive look into how warehouse management in particular is optimized, omnichannel fulfillment likewise, with the help of data and analytics. We'll now turn it over to Rich one more time for a quick overview of Oracle's related capabilities.
Yeah, thank you. So, Oracle has really been a very mature cloud player in developing a whole series of cloud services, from analytics to AI, machine learning, data management, infrastructure, to make a platform that allow retailers to achieve the best practices that were just talked about. Now, this platform is not just for developers. It's not just for machine learning and data scientists, experts. It's also for business consumers who don't have the interest or knowledge to use of the advanced technologies. But the critical thing here is that this platform is configurable. It's designed for retail. You can buy or build, meaning this platform allows you to start with industry-specific data models and adapt those, or bring your own. Platform allows you to work in 100% public cloud or hybrid architecture, where this parts of this analytics stack connect into your network, into your existing data platforms, data lakes, and warehouses, and so forth. So that's all I'd like to just say is that, I think over the last 5 years, we've done a good job at developing a wide range of services. And we'd love to hear your feedback on these and collaborate further about how we can help you achieve the best practices that were shared today.
Thanks, Rich. And with that, we'll conclude our webinar session for today. I want to take a moment to thank all of our speakers for sharing their research, insights, and recommendations with us, and a special thanks to Oracle for making this webinar possible. We hope you found this webinar to be beneficial, and if you'd like to learn more, you can reach out via the contact information, or feel free to visit the links provided. Again, I want to thank you all for attending this webinar, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.